She helped a homeless man not knowing. He was the company's new owner. If you're new here, welcome to True Soul Narratives, where we tell stories of love that heals, betrayal that scars, and redemption that restores. If this story moves you, make sure to subscribe and leave a like. Now, let's return to the story. The boardroom was silent, too silent. Emma Wells sat frozen in her chair, her hands gripping the armrest so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Across the polished mahogany table sat the new CEO of Crawford Industries, the man everyone had been whispering about for weeks, the mysterious owner who'd just inherited the company. He was looking directly at her, and he was smiling. "You're the one who gave me your lunch." Emma's breath caught in her throat. "What?" "Your scarf, your kindness when I had nothing." The room tilted. Her coworkers turned to stare at her, confusion spreading across their faces like wildfire. Whispers erupted around the table. Emma felt her face drain of all color. No, it couldn't be. Her mind flashed back. 2 weeks ago, the man outside, the homeless man she'd helped. Dirty clothes, shivering in the cold. Those piercing blue eyes that had looked at her with such gratitude. Oh my God, that was him? The CEO leaned forward, his smile widening, warm and genuine. "I don't forget the people who see me when I'm invisible, Emma." Her heart pounded so hard she thought everyone in the room could hear it. 2 weeks earlier, Emma's life had been exactly what it always was. Predictable, exhausting, barely enough. She was 29 years old, working as a mid-level marketing coordinator at Crawford Industries, a manufacturing company that had been a city staple for 40 years. Emma had been there for 5 years, 5 long years of early mornings, late nights, and ideas that her boss Jennifer took credit for. Every performance review was the same. "You're doing great, Emma. Keep up the good work." But when promotion time came, someone else's name got called. Someone with connections. Someone who knew how to play the game. Emma didn't play games, she just worked. Hard. Honestly. She lived in a tiny one-bedroom apartment across town, the kind where the heat barely worked in winter and the neighbors argued loud enough to hear through the walls. Paycheck to paycheck, every month a careful calculation of bills versus groceries versus the occasional coffee that made the mornings bearable. But Emma never complained. That wasn't who she was. She showed up. She did her job. She smiled even when Jennifer, her boss, a sharp-tongued woman in expensive suits, would swoop in and present Emma's campaigns as her own. "Great work on this, Jennifer," the executives would say, and Jennifer would nod, accepting praise for ideas that had kept Emma up until 2 a.m. Emma would sit in the back of the conference room, invisible, always invisible. Then came the announcement that changed everything. Company-wide email, emergency meeting. The owner, Richard Crawford, had passed away suddenly. Heart attack, 73 years old. The company was being inherited by someone new. His son, someone no one had ever met. Panic spread through the office like a virus. New ownership means layoffs. They always clean house. We're all getting fired. Emma tried not to think about it. She couldn't afford to lose this job. She had exactly $800 in savings. That was it. One missed paycheck and she'd be drowning. But she pushed the fear down, focused on work, on the things she could control. It was a cold November morning when everything shifted, the kind of cold that bites, that seeps through your coat and settles in your bones. Emma was walking to work, lunch bag in hand, the same brown paper bag she packed every night. Peanut butter sandwich, an apple, homemade chocolate chip cookies she'd baked on Sunday. She was already running late. Jennifer had scheduled an early meeting, another one of those sessions where Emma would present ideas and Jennifer would take notes to claim them later. But as Emma approached the building entrance, she stopped. There was a man huddled against the brick wall beside the glass doors. His clothes were filthy, torn jeans, a jacket that had seen better days, maybe better years. His hair was long, matted, his face covered in a patchy beard. He was shivering, his arms wrapped around himself, trying to hold in whatever warmth his body could generate. The security guard was standing over him, arms crossed. "Move along, buddy. You can't stay here. This is private property." The homeless man looked up, and Emma saw his eyes, piercing blue, clear, intelligent. Despite everything, despite the dirt and the exhaustion and the obvious struggle, those eyes held something. Dignity, strength, a quiet resilience that made her heart squeeze. The security guard nudged him with his foot, not hard but dismissive, like he was shooing away a stray dog. I said move. Emma felt something rise in her chest, anger, frustration, sadness. She didn't know which, she just knew she couldn't walk past. She was late, Jennifer would be furious. The meeting was in 10 minutes, but her feet carried her forward anyway, toward the man, toward a decision that would change absolutely everything. Emma stopped in front of him and knelt down. The security guard frowned. Miss Wells, you don't have to. It's fine, Marcus, Emma said quietly, not taking her eyes off the man. Up close, she could see the weariness etched into his face, the lines around his eyes, the way his hands trembled, not just from cold, but from hunger, from exhaustion, from the weight of being unseen. Emma reached into her lunch bag and pulled out her sandwich, her apple, the small bag of cookies. Here, she said, holding them out. The man stared at her, stunned, like he couldn't quite believe what was happening. You need this more than I do. He blinked. His voice, when he finally spoke, was rough but surprisingly steady. You sure? Emma smiled, a real smile. I'm sure. There's a cafe down the street. I'll grab something. That was a lie. She didn't have money for the cafe. She'd go without lunch today, but it was worth it. The man took the food slowly, carefully, like it was something precious. What's your name? Emma. What's yours? He hesitated, then softly, Daniel. Thank you, Emma. Really. She nodded, stood up, and rushed inside, her heart pounding for reasons she didn't fully understand. Behind her, Daniel watched her go, those piercing blue eyes following her until she disappeared through the glass doors. And in that moment, neither of them knew that everything had just changed. If you're loving this story and want to see what happens next, hit that subscribe button right now. We share powerful stories about kindness, love, and the unexpected ways life can transform. Don't miss the rest of Iman and Daniel's journey. Here's a question for you. Have you ever helped someone without knowing who they really were? Share your story in the comments below. Emma walked into that meeting 17 minutes late. Jennifer's glare could have frozen fire, but Emma barely noticed. Her mind was still outside with Daniel, wondering if the sandwich would be enough, if he had anywhere warm to sleep that night. Nice of you to join us, Emma, Mama, Jennifer said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Emma apologized, sat down, tried to focus. But all she could think about were those blue eyes and the quiet thank you that had sounded like it carried the weight of 1,000 unanswered prayers. The next morning, Emma left her apartment 30 minutes early. She stopped at the corner deli and bought a large coffee, black, strong, still steaming, and a breakfast sandwich, egg and cheese on a roll. It cost her $8 she couldn't really spare, but she didn't hesitate. Daniel was in the same spot, huddled against the wall. When he saw her approaching, something flickered across his face. Surprise. Maybe hope. Morning, fish, Emma said, handing him the coffee and sandwich. Daniel stared at the items in his hands like they were made of gold. You came back. Of course I did. His voice was thick. Most people don't. Emma felt her chest tighten. Well, I'm not most people. She had to rush and try him again, but this time she glanced back. Daniel was watching her, the coffee held carefully in both hands, steam rising into the cold morning air. Day 3 brought rain, heavy, relentless rain that turned the streets into rivers and the sky into one endless gray sheet. Emma stood in the office lobby, staring out at the downpour. She had one umbrella, small, floral, barely big enough for one person. She was about to head out for lunch when she saw him. Daniel, still outside, soaked through, trying to shield himself under the narrow building overhang, but the wind kept driving the rain sideways, drenching him anyway. Emma didn't think. She just moved. She walked outside, opened her umbrella, and handed it to him. Take this. Daniel looked up at her, water streaming down his face. You'll get wet. I'll survive, Emma said. You need it more than I do. Before he could argue, she turned and walked back inside. By the time she reached her desk, she was soaked to the bone, her hair plastered to her face, her clothes dripping onto the floor. Her coworker Jessica spun around in her chair, eyebrows raised. Emma, what happened to you? It's raining. I can see that. Where's your umbrella? Emma wrung out her sleeve. I gave it to someone who needed it. Jessica's eyes narrowed. Then understanding dawned. Wait, the homeless guy? Emma, why are you helping him? Emma looked at her, really looked at her. Because he's a person, Jessica. When did we stop seeing people? Jessica opened her mouth, closed it, had no answer. By day 5, the temperature had dropped below freezing. Emma dug through her closet that morning and found an old scarf. Thick, navy blue, warm. She'd gotten it as a gift years ago, barely wore it anymore. She also grabbed a pair of gloves, worn but functional. When she handed them to Daniel, his hands shook as he took them. You don't have to keep doing this, he said quietly. Emma smiled. I know, I want to. And then something shifted. They started talking, really talking. Emma learned that Daniel was well-spoken, articulate. He asked about her day, her work, her life. Not the way people usually asked, surface level and distracted. He listened, actually listened. Emma found herself telling him things she hadn't told anyone. I got passed over for another promotion yesterday, she admitted on day 6, sitting beside him on the cold concrete, her back against the building wall. 5th time in 3 years. Daniel turned to look at her. Why? Because my boss takes credit for my work, and I don't have the connections other people have. She laughed bitterly. I'm good at my job, Daniel, really good. But no one sees it. I see it, he said simply. Emma's throat tightened. You don't even know me. I know you give your lunch to strangers, you give your umbrella in the rain, your scarf when it's freezing. He paused. That tells me everything I need to know. On day 7, Daniel asked her something no one else ever had. What do you really want, Emma? Not what you think you should want. What do you dream about? Emma hesitated. No one asked her about dreams. Dreams were for people with safety nets and savings accounts. But something about Daniel made her want to answer honestly. I wanted to run my own marketing firm, she said quietly. Help small businesses that can't afford big agencies. Give them a voice. Make a real difference, not just sell products. She shook her head. But that's just a dream. It's not realistic. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice firm. Dreams aren't foolish, Emma. Giving up on them is. The words hit her like a physical thing. Settled in her chest, made her eyes sting with unexpected tears. She looked at him. This man with nothing, sitting on a sidewalk, cold and hungry and invisible to almost everyone. And yet he had wisdom, presence, something that made her feel seen in a way she'd never felt before. Emma started bringing him dinner too, sitting with him during her lunch breaks, even when it was cold, even when it was uncomfortable. They talked about everything. Books, philosophy, life. He'd read Steinbeck, knew Hemingway, could quote Marcus Aurelius. This wasn't just a homeless man. This was someone extraordinary hiding in plain sight. But her coworkers didn't see it that way. Emma's new boyfriend is a bum, she heard Tyler whisper in the break room. Laughter followed, cruel, mocking. Emma walked in, grabbed her coffee, and turned to face them. His name is Daniel, and he's more genuine than anyone in this building. The laughter died. Uncomfortable silence filled the room. Emma walked out, head high, heart pounding. But the real confrontation came on day 9. Jennifer cornered Emma by the elevators, her face tight with disapproval. I've been watching you. Emma's stomach dropped. Excuse me? Your little charity project outside. It looks bad for the company. Homeless people loitering at our entrance? We have clients, Emma. Important clients who don't want to see that. Emma's jaw clenched. He's not loitering. He's surviving. And I'm helping him. Jennifer stepped closer, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Stop associating with homeless people near our entrance. That's not a request. He's a human being who needs help. He's a liability, And so are you if you keep this up. Jennifer's eyes hardened. Choose, Emma, your job or your homeless friend. The words hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Emma felt anger surge through her veins, hot, righteous, unstoppable. She looked Jennifer straight in the eye and said quietly but firmly, I choose humanity. Jennifer's face flushed red. Then consider this a formal write-up. One more incident and you're terminated. Do you understand? Emma didn't flinch. Perfectly. Jennifer stormed off, heels clicking sharply against the tile floor. Emma stood there shaking. Not from fear, from fury, from the realization that she'd just put her entire livelihood on the line for a man she barely knew. But as she walked outside that evening and saw Daniel waiting, saw his face light up when he spotted her, she knew she'd made the right choice. Some things mattered more than paychecks. Some people deserved to be seen. And Emma Wells wasn't going to stop seeing Daniel, no matter what it cost her. Day 10 arrived cold and gray, just like all the others. Emma walked to work with a thermos of hot soup and a thick blanket she'd found at a thrift store. She'd stayed up late the night before, hemming the edges so it wouldn't fray. Small things, but they mattered. She rounded the corner to the building entrance and stopped. Daniel wasn't there. The spot where he usually sat against the brick wall was empty, just concrete, cold, bare. Emma's heart sank. Maybe he's just running late, she told herself. Maybe he found somewhere warmer to sleep and overslept. She waited. 10 minutes. 15. 20. Nothing. She had to go inside eventually. Work wouldn't wait. But all through the morning, Emma kept glancing out the window, hoping to see that familiar figure huddled by the wall. He never appeared. At lunch, Emma did something she'd never done before. She left the office and walked the surrounding blocks, searching. She checked doorways, alleyways, the park 3 blocks over where she'd heard some homeless people gathered. Nothing. She stopped at a shelter 2 miles away, the soup still warm in her thermos. Have you seen a man named Daniel? She asked the worker at the front desk. Mid-40s, blue eyes, about 6 feet tall. The woman shook her head. We see a lot of people, honey. That description could be anyone. Emma tried 2 more shelters, asked other people on the streets. No one had seen him. No one knew where he'd gone. By day 11, Emma was genuinely worried. By day 12, she was devastated. She sat in her apartment that night, staring at the extra sandwich she'd made, the one she'd planned to give him. And she realized something that made her chest ache. Daniel hadn't just been charity. He hadn't just been someone she helped. He'd become a friend, the only person in her life who really listened, who asked real questions, who saw her, not as an employee or a resource or a subordinate, but as a person. And now he was gone. Where did he go? Was he safe? Was he okay? The questions haunted her, followed her through sleepless nights and distracted days. She'd never even gotten his last name. Then, on day 14, everything changed. The email came at 8:47 a.m. Emergency all-staff meeting, mandatory attendance. Conference room, 10:00 a.m., sharp. The office erupted into chaos. This is it. The layoffs are coming. New ownership always cleans house. We're all getting fired. Panic spread like wildfire. People whispered in corners, updated their resumes, made frantic phone calls. Emma felt her stomach twist. She'd been written up. She was already on thin ice with Jennifer. If anyone was getting cut, it would be her. She tried to focus on work, but her hands shook every time she touched her keyboard. At 9:55, people started filing into the main conference room. The big one, the one they used for major announcements. It could hold 200 people, and today it needed every seat. Emma found a spot near the back, trying to make herself small, invisible. Jennifer swept past, her expression smug. She leaned over to whisper to another manager. People who don't fit our culture will be gone by noon. Mark my words. Emma's throat went dry. The room filled, the air thick with tension and fear. 200 employees, all waiting, all wondering who would survive the cut. At exactly 10:00 a.m., the side door opened, and the new CEO walked in. Emma's heart stopped, completely stopped. It was Daniel, but not the Daniel she knew. This Daniel was clean-shaven. His hair trimmed and styled. He wore an expensive charcoal suit that fit him perfectly, a crisp white shirt, a silk tie. He moved with confidence, with authority, with the commanding presence of someone who owned the room. But those eyes, those piercing blue eyes, they were the same. Emma felt the room spin, her vision blurred at the edges. She gripped the armrest of her chair to keep from falling. No, no, this isn't possible. Daniel walked to the front of the room, every eye following him. The whispers died. The silence became absolute. He stood behind the podium, his gaze sweeping across the crowd. And then he spoke. 2 weeks ago, I walked among you. His voice was strong, clear, authoritative. Not as your CEO, but as someone society had forgotten. Someone invisible. Someone homeless. Gasps erupted around the room. Heads turned. Confusion rippled through the crowd like a wave. Emma couldn't breathe. I inherited this company from my late father, Richard Crawford. But before taking control, before stepping into this role, I needed to understand something. His eyes found Emma in the back of the room, locked onto hers. I needed to know if compassion still existed in the corporate world, if anyone would see a person in need, not a problem to ignore, if humanity still had a place here. Emma's throat tightened. Tears welled in her eyes. She couldn't look away. Daniel's expression hardened slightly as he continued. I watched how you treated someone you thought had nothing to offer you, someone you believed was beneath you. He turned, his gaze landing on Jennifer in the front row. You, Jennifer Ross, demanded I be removed. You called security multiple times. You complained that a homeless man hurt your brand image. You threatened an employee for showing basic human decency. Jennifer's face drained of all color, white, pale, stricken. Daniel turned to point at other employees scattered throughout the room. You ignored me, you mocked me, you kicked at my cup when I asked for spare change. You complained about me to building management. You walked past like I didn't exist. The room was so silent you could hear people breathing. Shame hung heavy in the air. Then Daniel's gaze returned to Emma, and his voice softened, changed, became something warm and genuine. And then there was Emma Wells. Emma's vision blurred with tears. You gave me your lunch, your coffee, your scarf when you were already cold, your umbrella when you knew that I'd get soaked. His voice caught slightly. But more than that, you gave me your time, your conversation, your humanity. Emma couldn't hold back the tears anymore. They streamed down her face, hot and unstoppable. You sat with me when everyone else walked past. You listened when I talked. You asked about my thoughts, my opinions, like they mattered. You treated me like a person, not a problem, not an inconvenience. A person. The room was watching her now. Every eye turned toward Emma in the back row. You defended me to your boss even though it could cost you your job. You chose compassion over your career, humanity over your paycheck. Daniel's eyes never left hers. That's the kind of person this company needs. That's the kind of leadership that will define our future. Emma sat frozen, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her chest. She'd helped a homeless man. Just helped him. Because it was right. Because he needed it. She'd never imagined, never dreamed, that he'd been watching, evaluating, testing, that he'd been the one person who could change everything. And now, sitting in that conference room with 200 pairs of eyes on her and tears streaming down her face, Emma Wells realized her life would never be the same again. The silence in the conference room was deafening. Daniel stood at the front, his expression unreadable. Then he turned back to Jennifer, who was still sitting in the front row, her face a mask of shock and rising panic. Jennifer Ross, her name fell like a hammer. You're terminated, effective immediately. Jennifer shot to her feet, her voice shrill. You can't do this! Daniel's expression didn't change. Calm, resolute, final. I just did. Compassion isn't optional here. It's required, and you've shown repeatedly that you don't possess it. He nodded toward the door where 2 security guards had appeared, as if they'd been waiting for this exact moment. Please escort Ms. Ross from the building. Jennifer sputtered, her face going from white to red in seconds. This is illegal. I'll sue. You can't just... You can have your personal items shipped to you, Daniel continued, as if she hadn't spoken. Your access has been revoked. Goodbye, Jennifer. The security guard stepped forward. Jennifer looked around the room desperately, searching for allies, for support, for anyone who would stand up for her. No one moved. No one said a word. She'd burned too many bridges, taken credit for too much work that wasn't hers, treated too many people like they were beneath her. And now everyone watched in stunned silence as she was escorted out, her heels clicking frantically against the floor, her voice echoing down the hallway until the door closed behind her. Gone. Just like that, Daniel turned back to the room. His gaze found Emma again, still sitting in the back, tears still streaming down her face, completely overwhelmed. Emma Wells. Her heart stopped. You're promoted to Director of Community Engagement and Marketing. Effective immediately. The room erupted. Some people clapped. Genuine applause mixed with nervous, obligatory clapping from others who didn't know what else to do. Emma couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't process what was happening. What? She finally managed to whisper, though no one could hear her over the applause. Daniel smiled, a real smile, warm, genuine. You understood humanity when no one else did. That's the leadership we need. Emma sat frozen as people turned to look at her, some with admiration, some with envy, some with confusion. She'd been a mid-level coordinator 10 minutes ago. Overlooked, invisible, written up and threatened with termination. And now she was a director, because she'd given a sandwich to a stranger. The meeting ended in a blur. Daniel made a few more announcements about company values, about changes coming, about a new direction focused on people, not just profits. But Emma barely heard any of it. Her mind was spinning. As people filed out, murmuring to each other in hushed, shocked tones, Daniel caught her eye. Emma, could you come to my office, please? It wasn't a question. She nodded numb and followed him through the crowd. People patted her back, congratulated her. She smiled mechanically, but inside she was screaming. What just happened? What is happening? Daniel's office was on the top floor. Corner office, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, expensive furniture, the kind of space that screamed power and success. Emma stepped inside, her heart pounding so hard it hurt. Daniel closed the door behind her and gestured to a chair. Please sit. She sat. He walked around his desk but didn't sit, just stood there looking at her. Finally, Emma found her voice. You're probably wondering why I did this. The undercover boss thing? Emma's voice cracked. Yeah, a little bit. Daniel smiled, a sad smile. My father built this company. 40 years of his life poured into Crawford Industries. He was brilliant, successful, wealthy. He paused, looking out the window. But he lost himself in the process, became cold, disconnected, stopped seeing people as people, and started seeing them as resources, assets, numbers on a spreadsheet. Emma watched him, seeing the pain etched into his face. When he died 6 months ago, I inherited everything. The company, the money, the legacy. Daniel turned back to her. But I didn't want to become him. I couldn't. Emma's throat tightened. So I did something he never would have done. Daniel's voice dropped. I spent time actually homeless. 3 months, living on the streets in different cities. Boston, Philadelphia, here. Emma's eyes went wide. 3 months? I wanted to understand what happens when society stops seeing you, when you become invisible. His voice cracked slightly. The cruelty, the way people look through you like you're not even there, the kicks, the insults, the complete and total erasure of your humanity. He took a shaky breath. But I also wanted to understand the rare moments of kindness, the lifelines, the people who still see you when everyone else has stopped looking. Daniel walked closer to Emma, his eyes locked on hers. Your kindness saved me in ways you don't understand, Emma. Not physically, but something deeper. You reminded me that goodness still exists, that compassion isn't dead, that people can still choose to be human even when it costs them something. Emma felt tears welling up again. I didn't help you for recognition. I helped because it was right. I know, Daniel said softly. That's what made it real. The silence between them stretched, thick, charged with something neither of them wanted to name. Emma stood, suddenly needing distance, needing space to think. So what now? I'm your employee. You're my boss. This is, this is complicated. Daniel stepped closer, not threatening, just present. It doesn't have to be. Emma's breath caught. What does that mean? It means, Daniel said quietly, that I didn't promote you to manipulate you. I promoted you because you deserve it. Because you're exactly the kind of leader this company needs. He paused. But it also means that over the past 2 weeks, sitting on that cold concrete, talking to you every day, I started to feel something I haven't felt in a very long time. Emma's heart pounded. Daniel, you made me feel seen, he continued. Not as a CEO, not as Richard Crawford's son, not as someone with money or power, just as Daniel, just as a person. His voice dropped to almost a whisper, and I haven't felt that in years. Emma stood frozen. Everything was happening too fast, too much. Just this morning she'd been worried about losing her job, and now she was a director. And now Daniel, the Daniel she'd given her lunch to, the man she'd sat with and talked to and genuinely cared about, was standing in front of her saying things that made her heart race and her head spin. I don't know what to say, she admitted. Daniel smiled. You don't have to say anything. Not yet. Just know that whatever happens next, it's your choice. No pressure, no expectations. He stepped back, giving her space. Take the weekend. Process everything. We'll talk Monday about your new role. And Emma? She looked up at him. Thank you. For everything. Let's play a game. If you're truly watching and not just reading comments, type kindness wins in the comments below. Only those who made it this far will understand. Now let's see how this story ends. Emma walked out of that office in a daze. Her entire world had shifted in the span of 2 hours. The homeless man she'd helped was a CEO. Her horrible boss was gone. She'd been promoted to a position she'd never dreamed of reaching. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, something else was growing. Something she couldn't quite name yet. Something that felt like the beginning of everything. 6 months passed like pages turning in a book Emma never knew she was writing. Crawford Industries transformed, completely transformed. Under Emma's leadership, the company launched employee volunteer programs, community outreach initiatives, partnerships with local shelters and food banks, humanity-first policies that put people before profits, compassion before quarterly earnings. The culture shifted, slowly at first, then all at once. Employees stopped seeing each other as competition and started seeing each other as people. The corporate coldness thawed. Kindness became the norm, not the exception. And Emma thrived. She led meetings with confidence she didn't know she possessed, pitched ideas that were actually heard, built programs that made real differences in real lives. She was good at this, really good. Daniel watched from the sidelines, attending her presentations, observing her lead teams. Pride radiated from him every time she spoke, but he kept his distance. Professional, appropriate. Their relationship was impeccable on the surface. But underneath was something else entirely. Something unspoken. Something that hummed in the air every time they were in the same room. Tension. Want. A question neither of them dared to ask. It was a Tuesday evening in late spring when everything changed. Emma had been working late, finalizing a proposal for a new community center partnership. She was exhausted, running on coffee and determination. At 8:47 p.m., she finally closed her laptop and decided she needed air. There was a small cafe 3 blocks from the office. Quiet, cozy, the kind of place that stayed open late for insomniacs and workaholics. Emma walked in, ordered a cappuccino, and found a corner table by the window. She was halfway through her drink when she saw him. Daniel, sitting 2 tables away, laptop open, coffee steaming beside him. He looked up, saw her, and smiled. Not a CEO smile, not a professional smile, just Daniel smiling at Emma. Mind if I join you? He asked, already standing. Emma's heart skipped. Please. He sat across from her, and for the first time in 6 months, they were just two people in a coffee shop. No boardrooms, no employees watching, no titles between them. Working late? Emma asked. Always. You? Same. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Daniel spoke, his voice softer than she'd heard in months. I owe you an apology. Emma blinked. For what? For not being honest from the start. For testing you. He set his coffee down, looking directly into her eyes. You gave me your lunch, your kindness, your time, and I was evaluating you, judging you. That wasn't fair. Emma was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice gentle. You needed to know, I understand. You inherited a company and wanted to make sure it had a soul. Still, Daniel insisted, it wasn't fair to you. Emma smiled softly. Life rarely is. Daniel took a breath. The air between them shifted, thickened. But there's something else I wasn't honest about. Emma's heart started racing. What? Those conversations we had? When I was outside your building? He leaned forward slightly. They weren't just information gathering. They weren't just part of some test. Emma couldn't breathe. Daniel reached across the table, slowly, carefully, and took her hand. You made me feel seen, Emma. Really seen. Not as a CEO, not as a homeless man, not as Richard Crawford's son. Just as Daniel. Just as a person who was lonely and lost and trying to figure out who he was supposed to be. Emma's eyes filled with tears. I saw you because you let yourself be seen. His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. I've spent 6 months keeping my distance. Being professional. Respecting boundaries. But Emma, I can't do it anymore. Daniel, I'm in love with you, he said simply. I have been since the day you gave me your umbrella and walked back into that building soaking wet. Maybe even before that. And I need you to know. Tears spilled down Emma's cheeks. This is complicated. Power dynamics, professional boundaries. Everyone will say, I know, Daniel interrupted. It is complicated. It's messy and difficult and people will talk. Emma wiped her eyes with her free hand, smiling through the tears. But you know what I learned from you? What? Sometimes the right thing is also the complicated thing. Sometimes you have to choose humanity over easy, love over simple. Daniel's eyes widened. Emma, I'm in love with you too, she whispered. I have been for months. Maybe since that first day when you looked at me with those blue eyes and said thank you like it meant everything. They stared at each other across the small table. Two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way. Through deception and honesty, through testing and truth, through a sandwich and a scarf and a million small moments of kindness. Daniel stood, walked around the table, pulled Emma to her feet, and kissed her. Soft, gentle, real. The coffee shop disappeared. The world disappeared. There was just them, just this moment, just two people who'd learned that sometimes love grows in the strangest soil. 1 year later, the city gathered for a ribbon-cutting ceremony. The new homeless outreach center stood gleaming in the afternoon sun. 3 stories, medical clinic on the first floor, job training center on the second, temporary housing on the third, everything someone needed to rebuild their life. And above the entrance, a sign, the Daniel and Emma Foundation. Emma stood beside Daniel in front of the crowd. Cameras flashed, reporters asked questions, city officials gave speeches, but Emma barely heard any of it. She turned to Daniel, squeezed his hand, and whispered, "Who knew a sandwich and a scarf could change everything?" Daniel looked at her, love shining in those piercing blue eyes. "You did. You always knew kindness mattered." "So did you. That's why you tested us. To find it." "No," Daniel said softly. "I tested to see if it existed. You proved it did." They kissed as cameras flashed around them. The crowd applauded. The ribbon was cut. The center opened its doors to people who needed hope, needed help. They needed someone to see them when the world looked away. And in that moment, Emma realized something beautiful. She hadn't just helped a homeless man. She'd found her purpose, her partner, her love, her life, all because she'd stopped to see someone when everyone else walked past. Emma didn't help Daniel expecting anything in return. She helped because it was human, because compassion doesn't calculate cost, because kindness doesn't ask for receipts. And sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest transformations, not just for the person receiving them, but for everyone involved, for companies, for communities, for two people who found love in the most unexpected place. Emma Wells gave away a sandwich and received a life she never imagined. Because that's what happens when you choose to see people. When you choose humanity over convenience. When you choose love over indifference. You don't just change their world, you change your own. What would you have done in Emma's position? If you saw someone struggling outside your work, would you have stopped to help? Would you have given your lunch, your time, your kindness? Comment below and share your story. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that compassion still matters in this world, hit that subscribe button right now. We share powerful stories about kindness, love, redemption, and the incredible things that happen when we choose to see each other. Don't miss the next one, because sometimes the person you help might just change your life forever. And sometimes a sandwich is more than a sandwich. It's the beginning of everything.